There's a particular type of person you might recognize. Perhaps you see them in your office, always composed, always reliable. Maybe you glimpse them in your family, the one everyone leans on, the steady hand that never seems to tremble. Or perhaps, when you look in the mirror, you see this person staring back at you. They are the eternally strong ones. The shoulders that never droop, the voices that never crack. The pillars that never crumble, not even when the ground beneath them shifts violently. You know them by what they don't do. They don't break down in public. They don't ask for help. They don't admit when they're drowning. Their vulnerability is a carefully guarded secret, locked away so thoroughly that sometimes even they forget where they've hidden the key. Strength becomes their identity, their armor, their prison. They wear it like a second skin, so close, so constant, that the line between protection and pain blurs completely. Science tells us that human beings were never meant to be indestructible. Our nervous systems evolved for connection, for the mutual regulation that happens when we allow ourselves to be seen in our wholeness. Yet some of us construct elaborate fortresses around our tenderness, convinced that to be human is to be weak, and to be weak is to be unworthy. We mistake invulnerability for strength, forgetting that the mightiest trees bend in the storm while the rigid ones snap. We confuse independence with resilience, not recognizing that even the most self-sufficient among us are still part of an interdependent web. And perhaps most tragically, we conflate emotional control with emotional health, never realizing that emotions suppressed don't disappear. They transform, they intensify, they leak out sideways in unexpected moments. The psychology of perpetual strength is rooted in early messages, some spoken aloud, others communicated in silence. The parent who never cried, the culture that celebrated stoicism above all else, the circumstances that demanded someone, anyone, step up and hold things together when everything threatened to fall apart. For some, being strong became a survival strategy in childhoods where vulnerability was punished or exploited. For others, it was a role they inherited, watching the adults around them suppress their own needs to care for everyone else. And for many, it's both, a complex interplay of nature, nurture, and necessity that crafts the unspoken mandate. Never let them see you sweat, cry, fear, or falter. The irony is exquisite and terrible. In trying to be the person who needs nothing, you become the person no one thinks to offer anything to. In showing only your capability, you hide your humanity. And it's our humanity, not our invincibility, that draws others close. What happens to a person who never puts down their shield? What toll does eternal vigilance take on a human heart? The body keeps the score, it always has. It tallies every swallowed tear, every stifled cry for help, every moment you smiled and said, "I'm fine," when you were anything but. The ledger of unexpressed emotion grows longer, heavier, until carrying it becomes your unconscious full-time job. Medical research confirms what many perpetually strong people discover too late: chronic stress, the kind that comes from constantly overriding your own needs, affects everything from immune function to cardiovascular health. The stress hormone cortisol, meant to surge briefly in genuine emergencies, instead maintains a steady drip into your system, gradually eroding your physical resilience, even as you project unshakable strength to the world. But the psychological cost runs even deeper. Human connection, real, authentic connection, requires mutual vulnerability. When you allow yourself only the role of supporter, never supported, you create a fundamental imbalance in your relationships. You become safe for others while remaining fundamentally unsafe with yourself. There's a particular loneliness that comes with being the strong one. It's the isolation of being surrounded by people who know your capabilities but not your wounds. People who see what you can do for them but not what you might need in return. It's standing in a crowded room, playing your role perfectly, while a voice inside whispers, "If they knew how close I am to breaking, would they still look at me the same way?" The perpetually strong develop a complex relationship with rest. Rest becomes something to be earned, not something inherently needed. And in a world of infinite demands, the earning never quite happens. The goalpost for enough constantly shifts forward, just out of reach. You find yourself saying, "I'll rest when," but that when rarely arrives. Control becomes both comfort and compulsion. You micromanage circumstances, emotions, appearances, anything to maintain the illusion of invulnerability. The irony is that in trying to control everything, you become controlled by the very need for control. Perhaps most insidious is how this pattern becomes self-reinforcing. When you've built your identity around being the rock for others, moments of genuine need become identity threats. Asking for help isn't just uncomfortable. It feels like a fundamental betrayal of who you are supposed to be. And so the cycle continues, growing stronger with each rotation, each avoided moment of vulnerability cementing the pattern more firmly in place. The people who feel they must always be strong develop remarkable coping mechanisms. They compartmentalize with surgical precision. They rationalize their own suffering while rushing to alleviate everyone else's. They develop an almost superhuman capacity to function despite pain, exhaustion, and depletion. But coping is not thriving, surviving is not living, and strength without softness is not sustainable. To understand the psychology of perpetual strength, we must examine its roots, the fertile soil where this particular tree first took hold. For many, it begins in childhood. Perhaps you were the eldest child, told explicitly or implicitly that you needed to be strong for your siblings. Perhaps you had a parent who was struggling with illness, addiction, mental health challenges, or the weight of their own unprocessed trauma, and you learned early that your needs came second. Or perhaps you grew up in circumstances of genuine danger, where showing vulnerability could make you a target. Culture writes its expectations on our bones. Some cultures explicitly celebrate stoicism, particularly in men, treating emotional expression as weakness rather than as essential human data. Others praise self-sacrifice, particularly in women, elevating martyrdom as the highest form of love. Religious traditions sometimes inadvertently reinforce these patterns, emphasizing endurance and silent suffering as virtues, rather than as sometimes necessary responses to difficult circumstances. And then there are the formative experiences that teach us the apparent danger of vulnerability. The time you cried and were mocked. The time you asked for help and were rejected. The time you admitted fear and were labeled as weak. The human brain is a pattern recognition machine, exquisitely tuned to avoid repeating painful experiences. One powerful negative outcome can create a lifelong aversion. Trauma, too, shapes our relationship with strength and vulnerability. When terrible things happen, especially early in life, we develop protective adaptations. The child who couldn't fight or flee might have learned to freeze and endure, developing a stoicism beyond their years. The person who experienced betrayal might have decided never to need anyone again. These were brilliant solutions to impossible situations, survival mechanisms that worked when nothing else could. But trauma responses are like evolutionary adaptations, perfectly suited to the environment in which they developed, potentially maladaptive in different circumstances. The hypervigilance that kept you safe in danger can exhaust you in safety. The emotional numbing that protected you from overwhelming pain can block you from experiencing joy and connection. For some, perpetual strength isn't just a personality trait or a coping mechanism. It's a carefully constructed identity. When you've built your sense of self around being the capable one, the reliable one, the one who never breaks, moments of ordinary human fragility become existential threats. Who are you if not the strong one? What is your value if you can't always be the giver, never the receiver? These origins aren't simple or singular. They intertwine and reinforce each other, creating a complex web of beliefs, behaviors, and neurological patterns. Understanding them isn't about assigning blame to parents, to culture, to circumstances, but about bringing compassion to the ways you learn to survive and recognizing that survival strategies aren't the same as thriving strategies. The armor you forged had a purpose. The walls you built protected something precious. The strength you cultivated carried you through impossible terrain. There is wisdom in acknowledging both the necessity of these adaptations and the possibility that they may no longer serve you in the same way. What if the strongest thing you could do was to put down the burden of always being strong? This isn't about abandoning responsibility or collapsing into helplessness. It's about expanding your definition of strength to include the courage of vulnerability, the wisdom of rest, and the power of authentic connection. True strength isn't the absence of weakness. It's the integration of all parts of yourself into a whole that is resilient precisely because it is flexible. It's the oak that stands for centuries, not because it never bends, but because it knows exactly how to move with the wind. The journey from perpetual strength to integrated strength begins with permission. Permission to be human in all the messy, imperfect, sometimes struggling ways that humans are. This permission must come first from within, though it helps immeasurably to have it reflected back by others who can hold space for your whole self. Small experiments in vulnerability can begin to shift the pattern. Naming a struggle, asking for help with something minor, allowing yourself to be seen in a moment of uncertainty. These aren't failures of strength, they're expansions of your capacity for authenticity and connection. The body that has held so much tension can learn to soften. Practices that reconnect you with physical sensation, mindful movement, breath work, even deliberate rest, begin to rewrite the embodied belief that you must always be braced for impact. The nervous system that has been stuck in hypervigilance can gradually learn that safety exists, that surrender doesn't equal danger. Relationships transform when you allow them to be reciprocal, when you recognize that letting others support you isn't burdening them, but is instead honoring their capacity and completing the circle of human connection. We are meant to take turns, to carry and be carried, to help and be helped, to witness and be witnessed. The people who have always been strong often fear that if they loosen their grip even slightly, everything will fall apart. That fear makes evolutionary sense, but rarely reflects current reality. More often, what happens in moments of brave vulnerability is that space opens for deeper connection, for unexpected solutions, for the discovery that you were never actually holding everything together alone. There is profound dignity in acknowledging limits, in saying, "This is too much for me right now," or "I need support with this." These aren't statements of failure, but of self-awareness, the kind of clarity that comes from truly knowing yourself, rather than performing an idealized version of strength. Perhaps most revolutionary is the recognition that your value never depended on your strength in the first place, that you are worthy of love, connection, and belonging, not because of what you can do or endure, but simply because you exist. Your inherent worth is not earned through perpetual capability, but is your birthright as a conscious being. The strongest thing you'll ever do might be to let yourself cry, to say, "I don't know," to reach for a hand when you're unsteady, to allow yourself to need, to want, to be incomplete without seeing these as character flaws. Because real strength isn't found in invulnerability, it's found in the courage to be seen as you are, in the resilience to rise again after falling, in the wisdom to know that interdependence isn't weakness, but the most natural state of being human, and in that integration of strength and softness, giving and receiving, holding on and letting go, you may find not just a more sustainable way of being in the world, but a more joyful one. One where your armor becomes a choice rather than a prison, where your strength becomes a gift freely given rather than a tax constantly paid. This is the invitation, not to abandon your strength, but to allow it to evolve into something more authentic, more balanced, and ultimately more powerful, because it encompasses all of who you are, not just the parts you've deemed acceptable to show the world. If this exploration of strength and vulnerability resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these reflections reach more people who might be carrying the weight of always needing to be strong. I'm curious, what part of the world are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, whether you're from bustling cities or quiet countryside, tropical islands or snowy mountains. I'd love to hear how the pressure to always be strong manifests in your culture and community. Each perspective adds depth to this conversation, and your experiences might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone in their journey. Thank you for being here.